May 12, 2017, 7 a.m. A nurse at a hospital in the north of England sits down at her computer. Her screen looks wrong. The desktop is gone. In its place, a red and black window, bold text, a countdown timer, and a demand for $300 in Bitcoin. She doesn't know it yet, but she's looking at the opening seconds of the largest ransomware attack in history. By noon that day, 80 NHS trusts across England and Scotland will be locked out of their own systems. Ambulances will be diverted, surgeries cancelled, patient records unreachable. The damage to the NHS alone £92 million. But WannaCry didn't just hit hospitals. In the same morning, it tore through 200,000 computers across 150 countries. FedEx, Telefonica, Deutsche Bahn, Nissan, Renault all hit simultaneously, and the weapon used to do it wasn't even built by the attackers. It was stolen from the United States National Security Agency. In the next 16 minutes, I'll show you exactly how WannaCry worked, how a 22-year-old researcher stopped it by registering a domain name for $10.69 on a whim, and how forensic investigators proved that a nuclear-armed nation-state was behind the keyboard. I'm Marius, and this is MD Cyber Forensics. May 12, 9:30 a.m. NHS IT teams are receiving calls from hospitals across the country. Computers are locking themselves mid-session. Staff are being thrown out of patient record systems in real time. In some hospitals, screens are going dark one by one, floor by floor. The ransomware note is spreading faster than anyone can isolate it. For the engineers, the question is immediate. Is this isolated? Or is it everywhere? Within the hour, they have their answer. It was everywhere. The patch that could have stopped all of it had been available for 59 days. Nobody had installed it. In the hours after WannaCry hit, security teams around the world were pulling apart the same question. How does ransomware spread this fast without anyone clicking anything? No phishing email, no malicious attachment, no user error. The infection was moving through networks on its own. That was the first anomaly. Ransomware doesn't do that. Traditional ransomware requires a human to trigger it: an email opened, a link clicked, a file downloaded. WannaCry was doing something different. It was scanning networks autonomously, identifying vulnerable machines, and infecting them without any interaction from the user at all. The second anomaly, the speed. WannaCry was spreading across entire hospital networks in minutes, not hours, minutes. At Barts Health NHS Trust in London, the largest NHS trust in England, systems across 5 hospitals were locking simultaneously. Security engineers watching the logs in real time described it as watching a fire spread through a building where every door was already open. The third anomaly, the ransom itself, $300 per machine. Payable in Bitcoin, with a countdown timer, 3 days to pay at $300, after that $600. After 7 days, all files permanently deleted. For investigators, the ransom note contained something unexpected. It had been written in 28 languages. That level of preparation told forensic analysts something immediately. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned, resourced, and built for global deployment. Someone had put serious time and money into this weapon. The question was who? To understand what WannaCry actually was, you need to understand where its core weapon came from. Not from North Korea, not from a criminal gang, from the United States National Security Agency. The NSA had developed a cyber weapon called EternalBlue. It exploited a vulnerability in Windows Server Message Block Protocol, the system Windows computers used to share files across a network. EternalBlue allowed an attacker to send a specially crafted packet to any vulnerable Windows machine and execute code on it remotely, without a username, without a password, without any user interaction at all. The NSA had kept EternalBlue classified and was using it for intelligence operations. Microsoft had no idea it existed. Then in April 2017, 1 month before WannaCry, a group called the Shadow Brokers leaked it publicly. They dumped a collection of NSA cyber weapons onto the internet for anyone to download. Microsoft had actually already issued a patch for the vulnerability on March 14, 59 days before the attack. Remember that number, 59 days. The patch existed, the fix was available, but across the NHS, across hospitals in 150 countries, across thousands of organizations globally, almost nobody had installed it. The attackers hadn't built a weapon, they had picked one up off the floor, and the door it walked through had been left open for 59 days. Let's talk about what WannaCry actually was under the hood, not just what it did, how it was engineered. WannaCry was two things combined that had never been combined before: a worm and ransomware. Most ransomware at the time required a human trigger. Someone clicks a link, someone opens an attachment. WannaCry needed none of that. The worm component, powered by EternalBlue, let it spread entirely on its own across any network it touched. No clicks, no phishing, no social engineering, just automatic, silent propagation from machine to machine. Here is exactly what happened when WannaCry landed on a computer. First, it checked for the kill switch domain. Hard-coded into the malware was a web address, a long, meaningless string of characters. Before doing anything else, WannaCry tried to connect to that address. If the address existed, the malware shut itself down. If it did not exist, it proceeded. At the time of the attack, that domain had never been registered, so it always proceeded. Second, it deployed Double Pulsar, another stolen NSA tool. Double Pulsar installed a backdoor on the infected machine, giving WannaCry full control of the system. Third, encryption began. WannaCry used a combination of RSA 2048 and AES 128 encryption, military grade. Without the decryption key held by the attackers, the files were mathematically unrecoverable. Once encryption was complete, the ransom screen appeared. Red and black interface, bold white text, a countdown timer, $300 in Bitcoin, pay within 3 days, after 3 days $600, after 7 days files permanently deleted. Across 80 NHS trusts in England and Scotland, staff were staring at this screen on computers that controlled patient records, MRI scanners, blood storage refrigerators, and theatre equipment. 70,000 devices locked, 19,000 appointments cancelled. 5 hospitals diverting ambulances to other facilities, £92 million in damage to the NHS alone. While this was happening on the same morning, a 22-year-old security researcher in the UK named Marcus Hutchins was watching the attack unfold online from his home. He started reverse engineering WannaCry's code, and he found the kill switch, that hard-coded domain WannaCry checked before executing, the one that had never been registered. He looked it up. It was available. He registered it. It cost $10.69. Within hours of registration, WannaCry stopped executing on newly infected machines across the entire world. One researcher, one domain, $10.69. He hadn't defeated WannaCry, but he had pulled the handbrake on the largest ransomware attack in history completely by accident. Let's talk about how WannaCry moved, because the speed of it is what made it unlike anything before. At 7:44 in the morning on May 12th, the first infection was recorded. By 8 in the morning, Telefonica in Spain was down. By 9 in the morning, the first NHS trusts in England were locked. By noon, 74 countries had reported infections. By the end of the day, 150 countries, 230,000 computers, all in under 24 hours. To understand why it moved that fast, you need to understand what EternalBlue actually did on the network. When WannaCry landed on one machine, it didn't wait. It immediately began scanning every IP address it could reach, looking for other machines with the SMB port open. Port 445 in a hospital network. Hundreds of computers share the same internal network. One infection meant every unpatched machine on that network was immediately exposed. In some NHS trusts, the entire internal network was compromised in under 10 minutes. Security teams described arriving at work to find the infection had already spread through entire floors before anyone had noticed. There was no patient zero to isolate. By the time anyone knew it was happening, it was already everywhere. So why couldn't they just stop it? The kill switch had slowed new infections, but it hadn't helped the machines already locked, and it hadn't fixed the underlying problem. The vulnerability was still there on every unpatched machine, on every network that hadn't installed the March 14th update. Here is what made containment so difficult. Isolating one infected machine didn't protect the network. because WannaCry wasn't spreading through emails or user actions. It was spreading autonomously through the network itself. The moment you disconnected one machine, the malware was already scanning for the next one. In the NHS, the problem ran deeper. 5% of NHS devices were still running Windows XP, an operating system Microsoft had stopped supporting in 2014, 3 years before the attack. For those machines, no patch existed at all. Microsoft took the extraordinary step of releasing an emergency patch for Windows XP specifically, a system they had officially abandoned. That decision alone tells you how serious this was. For security teams across 150 countries, the only real option was to take entire networks offline, shut everything down, rebuild from backups. For hospitals, that meant doing it while patients were inside. The damage was already done. The question now was who did it? And how do you prove it when the attacker is a nation state? Now, let's switch sides. The attack is contained, the kill switch is active, but 230,000 computers across 150 countries are still encrypted. £92 million of damage done to the NHS alone, and nobody knows who did it. The FBI, GCHQ, and the National Cybersecurity Center opened parallel investigations. Private firms Kaspersky, Symantec, and Google's threat analysis team began their own forensic analysis. Here is exactly what they found. Step 1. The code itself. When investigators reverse-engineered WannaCry, they found something unusual inside the malware. Embedded in an early version of the code were fragments of another piece of malware, a backdoor tool called Contopy, previously seen in one place. Attacks attributed to the Lazarus group, a state-sponsored hacking unit operating out of North Korea. That was the first thread. Step 2. The language fingerprint. The ransom notes had been written in 28 languages. Investigators analyzed every translation. The English version, read like a native speaker. The Chinese version, read like a native speaker. The remaining 26 languages, read like machine translations. 2 native languages, 1 primary suspect region. The forensic profile was narrowing fast. Unmasking. Now, Step 3. The infrastructure. Investigators traced the command and control servers WannaCry used to manage infected machines. The registration patterns, hosting providers, and timing of server activity all pointed to infrastructure previously used in attacks attributed to the Lazarus group. Step 4. The Bitcoin wallets. WannaCry collected its ransoms into 3 specific Bitcoin addresses. Blockchain analysts tracked every transaction. When the attackers moved the funds, investigators followed the money to mixing services and exchanges previously linked to North Korean state operations. Step 5. The kill switch mistake. Here is something investigators found deeply revealing. The kill switch domain inside WannaCry was a mistake. It should never have been there. It was likely a sandbox detection mechanism, a way for the malware to check if it was running inside a test environment before executing. If the domain existed, the malware assumed it was being tested and shut down. The fact it was hard-coded suggests the developers were rushed, operating under pressure, possibly under a deadline imposed from above. In December 2017, the United States and United Kingdom formally attributed WannaCry to North Korea, specifically to the Lazarus group operating under direction of the Reconnaissance General Bureau, North Korea's primary intelligence agency. A nuclear-armed nation-state had deployed ransomware against the world's hospitals. So what actually changed after WannaCry? Marcus Hutchins, the researcher who registered the kill switch domain for $10.69, was arrested 3 months later, not for WannaCry, but for writing a different piece of banking malware years earlier. He pleaded guilty in 2019 and was sentenced to time served, no prison. The judge acknowledged his WannaCry work as extraordinary mitigation. North Korea has never been formally charged. No individual has faced a courtroom for WannaCry. In 2018, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted a North Korean national named Park Jin-hyuk for his role in the attack. He has never been extradited. He remains in North Korea. The NHS overhauled its cybersecurity framework entirely. Microsoft ended its practice of stockpiling vulnerabilities for intelligence purposes, and governments around the world began treating ransomware not as cybercrime but as an act of war. Here is the forensic lesson that outlasts all of it. WannaCry succeeded because of a patch that existed for 59 days and was never installed. 59 days. The window between knowing a door was unlocked and someone walking through it. The attackers didn't build a way in. They found one that had been left open. Next time, SolarWinds, the hack that owned the United States government, without a single piece of malware. 18,000 organizations compromised through one software update, zero suspicion. I'm Marius, and this is MD Cyber Forensics.